so-called rebels who proved effective at delaying and pressuring McCarthy's original speaker vote are openly warning tonight that they will oust McCarthy if he does not act on this and other issues like spending and the term limits vote they want. That includes Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, who's dialing up pressure and invoking his own past record, exacting concessions from Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin McCarthy celebrating a victory that almost didn't happen.
Gaetz, one of the leaders of the rebellion.
Mr. McCarthy doesn't have the votes today. He will not have the votes tomorrow. And he will not have the votes next week, next month, next year.
I mean,
Wow.
this looks like a bit of a heated conversation. Yeah.
This is an incredible moment. McCarthy is now directly engaging Matt Gaetz.
Look at somebody's holding somebody back. Look at that. Oh, somebody just held somebody back.
Joining me now is that Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida. Thanks for making time for us on the beat tonight, sir.
My pleasure. Good to be with you, Ari.
Let's start with this rather newsworthy meeting today. What happened, and did you hear anything from the speaker that addresses these concerns you've gone so public with?
No, I was quite disappointed that at our meeting there wasn't a discussion about how to bring Speaker McCarthy into compliance with that agreement that we hammered out in January. And thanks for not over-torquing impeachment when it comes to my particular grievances. Of course, I think we need fulsome and robust oversight, and I do think that Joe Biden deserves impeachment. But that wasn't a part of the deal that we crafted in January, and it would be dishonest for me to represent that it was. We talked about balanced budgets, term limits, single subject spending bills. Those things have not happened. And frankly, a lot of my constituents over the August break were asking me if I was really serious about the deal, being that we have not done nearly enough to enforce it.
Yeah, you mentioned those items, those terms. Everyone can have a rich sort of debate about them, but we'll put up on the screen some of what you have now claimed this week, that these were things you guys were supposed to get. A vote on the term limits. We know how long people staying in office is controversial. Cutting spending. You mentioned the Jan 6 footage and subpoenas for Hunter Biden. What is most important to you, and what would actually, in your view, affect the lives of the American people if you got any of these?
No, undeniably, it would be the spending. I mean, we're about to hit the moment in time where we're going to run $2 trillion annual deficits at a time when much of the world is de-dollarizing, from BRICS to the African Union to more energy being sold in the yuan with the new deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So as the world de-dollarizes, I think that it's really dangerous for us to be running up these deficits. If Speaker McCarthy brought us individual spending bills over the course of this initial year, he would not be facing the challenge that he faces now from those of us who believe he hasn't been honest. And I know term limits sort of is a talking point to people in the media, but I got to tell you, Ari, as I travel the country and go home, people want to vote on term limits. And I know it's not going to pass initially, but in the words of the great coach Bobby Bowden, sometimes you got to lose by a lot, lose by a little, then win by a little and win by a lot.
Okay. You mentioned this agreement. You're on record and you were on the House floor this week saying he's violating the agreement. Now, one problem with that is the public still hasn't seen the full written agreement. The last time you were here, we discussed that. Let me play a little bit of that. Take a look. Point blank, Congressman, have you or your staff seen this additional agreement in writing in any form?
Yeah, it took multiple forms. There was specifically a side-by-side sheet where we made offers to McCarthy.
Why not have you and your colleagues who negotiated it just release what was agreed to at the time in writing?
Again, I have no objection to that. I don't know that I still have a copy.
Wouldn't it be better to finally and fully transparently release the whole thing so both your constituents, Republicans, and the public could see what now you claim is his violation of these assorted pledges?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Chip Roy keeps my copy. Tim Wrights at the Freedom Caucus has copies as well. But keep this in mind, Ari. No one is disputing the authenticity of the terms that I have laid out. You know, Kevin McCarthy has 200 allies in Congress, and no,
I'll let you finish on that.
It's important. It's really important.
I'll let you get. But Chip Roy, this is up to Chip Roy to release your agreement.
Well, I don't have a copy of it. I know it exists, and no one is disputing the terms. So you are picking a fight here that not even Kevin McCarthy and his top allies quibble about. Someone in the press should ask Kevin McCarthy.
Okay.
Did you commit to a term limit?
Well, we're asking everybody. We're asking everybody who will come on. Are you calling on Congressman Chip Roy to release the agreement tonight?
Well, I leave that up to him. I have no problem with it. If Chip Roy releases the agreement, you will find it is entirely consistent with what I've said. Matter of fact, Chip Roy was asked about the agreement at a press conference earlier this week, and he said, in fact, that all of the claims that I'd made about term limits, balanced budgets, and single subject spending bills were, in fact, reduced to writing. Again, let's get to something that people are actually quibbling about so we can have a more interesting discussion.
Well, we're going back and forth. But if it's your copy, as you say, if it's part of the agreement you and this group reached, and we showed the sound and you talking about how important this all has been, why don't you get your copy released?
Again, I just told you, I don't have a copy, but no one is disputing this. And by the way, you don't even have to look at a written agreement because back in January of this year, these things didn't just emerge out of nowhere. We talked about them at the time. So in January, we were saying balanced budgets, term limits, single subject spending bills. Then again, we've said it. And now, unfortunately, at the meeting this morning, Kevin McCarthy was non-responsive. I can't quite tell if he's in the denial phase or the anger phase, but we've got to get to bargaining pretty soon in order to resolve this.
We always appreciate Elizabeth Kubler-Ross reference around here and the many stages of going through something, sir. Let me play for you what the speaker says. We are hearing from you, and you are saying that he is blatantly violating agreements he made on those votes and other things. In fairness, I also want to play what he's saying for your response. Here was, very specifically, Speaker McCarthy talking about you today.
But let me be very clear with you. Matt is upset about an ethics complaint. I don't care what they threaten against me. I am not going to interject into an independent committee like ethics committee. So they can do whatever they want, but I'm going to maintain this meeting.
The speaker says this is really about an ethics complaint. Your response?
My response is really going to surprise you. This is about term limits, a balanced budget amendment, and single subject spending bills, just like I've been saying for an entire year. I am the most investigated man in the entire Congress. And right there, you saw Kevin McCarthy lying like a dead dog because I have never asked him to interfere in any ethics matter. I had the FBI and DOJ who hate me investigate me for 3 years. You covered it nearly nightly. And even you acknowledged at the end that my denials held up consistently. And the people who spread lies about me are sitting in a federal prison right now because they were part of a criminal scheme, not me.
In fairness, it is true the DOJ closed the case. As you mentioned, we reported that. It is interesting to see you go to this point with the speaker. He seems to be implying that you are not doing these things for the reasons you say, but that you were requesting, or perhaps through other people requesting, some special handling or treatment in the ethics complaint. You're saying that's a lie tonight.
That is an abject lie from a sad and pathetic man who lies to hold on to power. He lied to get power in January when he made this agreement, and he's lying now about the basis for breach. And you know what? Eventually, the lying has to come to an end, and the votes are going to start on a motion to vacate. I certainly hope that instead of that path, the Speaker comes into compliance on term limits, balanced budgets, and single subject spending bills. And guess what? If that happens, there will be no motion to vacate, which would totally cut against his argument that this is somehow about an ethics matter of like the lies of yesteryear.
Yeah. Let me play, and we've spent now about 10 minutes on some of this, and it is true there hasn't been the term limit vote and other things. So while we'd like to see the copy of the aforementioned agreement, we're covering that. We're covering your exchange with McCarthy. I also want to play him on the impeachment. I'm very curious because you're on the inside. What's really going on? You know, we're here covering this. The audience, the viewers, the citizens want to know. Yesterday, McCarthy says impeachment inquiry. Today he says, and I have this, I've got all my notes here, but he says something to the effect of, well, it's not really about impeachment. It's about getting answers. And then I have sound I want you to listen to where he says this. He says it's actually not impeachment. Take a listen.
So all we're trying to do, it's not impeachment, nothing to do with it. It's just answer these questions. Had the president been truthful when he said he never talked to his son about business or never dealt with bereavement, never dealt with Ukraine that way, we would never do this. It's not impeachment, nothing to do with it.
Congressman, the question is, one, is this an inquiry that's going towards impeachment? If so, what is the high crime or misdemeanor? And is Kevin McCarthy handling this the right way this week or not?
Yeah, I couldn't tell if you cut away to Kevin McCarthy or a commercial for low T, because yesterday's impeachment is somehow today's not impeachment. Good gracious, if we actually have to go make the case against Joe Biden, let's hope we have effective people like Jim Jordan and James Comer making the case, and maybe turn off Kevin McCarthy's microphone for a while. The high crime and misdemeanor to me is bribery. I mean, when you've got Joe Biden participating in 16 meetings with Hunter Biden's business partners, and you can't even really call them that. They're just more like bribe payers because there was no business. And then to watch the White House shift its position pretty substantially from, I never talked to my son about his business deals, to, well, I wasn't in business with my son. It's quite the tell that there's a lot going on here. Yep. And I also look at the government actions. Everybody talks about the bribes paid, but I look at what people got for those bribes. The Chinese were plowing in a lot of this money, and in exchange, in one of his first acts, Joe Biden dissolved the China initiative at the Department of Justice that President Trump had set up to go after Chinese malign influence. So the bribe payers were getting theirs, the Bidens were getting theirs.
Let me jump in here. I let you give that answer there. We're not going to litigate all of this right now, but is your bribery case strong if you don't have any bribery convictions against Mr. Biden? Hunter Biden faces other allegations, but not that, and against the sitting president when there's an open special counsel probe that hasn't found it. How do you bring a bribery impeachment without any bribery convictions?
Well, I don't think that there's a special counsel looking at Joe Biden for bribery. I think they're looking at him for his mismanagement of records, which I actually think is quite dumb, and we should just resolve the records issue in a nonpartisan way. But as it relates to a conviction, no, because Joe Biden controls the Department of Justice and because credible whistleblowers have come forward and said that DOJ officials were actually stopping the investigative work as they were building the cases that could lead to prosecutions on these matters, I don't think that that is the gold standard. I think that we can develop the evidence. We have our own Article 1 powers that are not lashed to a criminal prosecution or a determination by an Article 3 court, and we're fully vested with the ability to bring accountability if we were sufficiently bold and rigorous.
Understood. And on the McCarthy side, though, now that we are here in the middle of this week, do you think he has made it clear that Republicans are closer to impeaching Biden, further from it,
he's never
or status quo, no change?
Yeah, I can peel back the curtain here. Kevin McCarthy is going to advance an actual impeachment on Joe Biden, a lot like he was going to advance an impeachment of Ali Mayorkas. Remember back in January of this year, he kept saying we were going to impeach Mayorkas, and the people that were blocking his speakership were blocking the impeachment of Mayorkas. Well, once Kevin got power, all of that just went by the wayside. And I think you're witnessing the same gaslighting and the same illusion and the same mirage right here. He doesn't really mean it. He knows he broke the deal in January. He knows there are enough of us in the Republican conference who want to hold him to that deal. And so he's throwing impeachment out like an ill-cast lure, and he has no real intent to follow through. By the way, if he did, we'd subpoena Hunter Biden. Like, if this was a serious effort, call it an inquiry, an impeachment, oversight, whatever you want. If you were really serious, you'd subpoena Hunter Biden and get answers. They're not serious, and that's why you see this failure theater in the absence of real accountability.
Yeah. It's interesting. You were a big part of that speaker clash. You were in the room today. You're, as you said, peel back the curtain. Whether people agree or disagree, we're trying to understand what's going on in that sometimes bizarre town. Congressman Gaetz, thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Ari.